Hello, this is Darren at Moonhare Studio, and my third and final in the series of scoring to screen, my adventures with the Westworld scoring competition, which was run by HBO and Spitfire Audio. It's customary to put the cue at the beginning of one of these videos, but it is very long. It's about 4 minutes. So I'm going to put it at the end with a link in the description if you do want to check it out first, and also a link to the original video, which is online anyway. I'll also put timed links to all the different sections in this video, so if you want to skip over certain things, not listen to all this waffle, you can get to the bit that interests you. And I'm also going to have a look at some other people's compositions and what they did with certain parts of the music that was, a very different take on what I've done. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll crack on. Now, I did see a comment come through on one person's tutorial about scoring to screen for this Westworld scene that said they didn't like the scene because there wasn't anything to get hold of. Honestly, if you can't get hold of anything on this one, then you're probably not going to get on with scoring to screen, because there's everything here. You've got scenes inside the car, which we've got dialogue in. You've got the car chase and the action sequences. You've got tension towards the end and the beginning. So there's everything in there to get hold of. So I almost look at this as a series of bookends. There are discrete elements within the whole which are then sandwiched together. For instance, you've got a tension at the beginning, which I've used an ambient sound, and I've reprised that but more extreme towards the end, where there is that tension but then it builds to a massive finale. And also, of course, there's the car chase, which it forms the most of the sequence really, and is split kind of in sort of two mini sections. And then of course you've got all the other elements, like you've got a section inside the car, and you've also got the genre change, I can't really say that, genre change section, which is quite mysterious, and a lot of people have interpreted that in all sorts of different ways. So let's have a look at some of those elements and the instrumentation as we go through. Now we have these amazing bookends for the car chase sequence that I just couldn't resist, and it's probably a bit hammy, but I just couldn't resist it. So Evan Rachel Wood's character at the beginning says the word go, so we've got that here.
Maximum speed, go.
So that's when I start my music. But also, I mean, just it's handing it to you on a plate when you get to the end of the whole car chase, coming down the road, and she says stop.
Stop.
And that's just, again, the perfect way to finish. So you've got go and you've got stop. So I've used those. So often if I want to come up with something a little bit different to what I would compose on the keyboard, because it's very easy if you're familiar with an instrument just to fall into the same old traps, I'll go for something else. I really love bass. I'm always drawn to bass lines, and so I did have a little bit of fiddle around. I came up with this sort of bass line in 11/4, which goes something like this. And so that formed the start of the piece. So I made a very conscious decision not to make this sound too massive at the start, because we're going straight into a very ethereal genre change section, and if you're at full bore, then it's going to sound quite false if you just stop it and go into this section and then start up again. So I've opted just for drums and bass in this section at a pace, and creating that 11/4 slightly off kilter feel, but driving it forward. I used two drum kits. I started off with Spitfire Labs drums, which is a very lo-fi kit, which sounds great actually. It's just a really good punchy lo-fi kit. and then joining it once the initial start is over. We've got a studio drummer from Native Instruments, which is much more technical, and also you can send the separate instruments out to their own channels, so then you've got a lot more capability to mix things like snare reverbs and do different compression on different drums and cymbals, etc. So that sort of starts off, sounds like this. We've got the Labs drum there, and then in comes studio drummer, and the two are running beside each other. But also underneath we've got this other sound, which is a shaker, which is just from the factory library from Contact. So sorry if there was a click there. I think we've got some storms around. And that's just a really nice little percussive element that just adds a little bit to it as you step through those first few bars. And then we're straight into the genre change. So the shaker's in there already, which will link into the genre change section and give it a little bit of rhythm, but without the need for the drums. The drums are just there's just a fill down that follows the bass that also goes down and introduces the electric guitar. And the electric guitar I've used is the Ample Sounds Gibson Les Paul. This is a fantastic sounding instrument, and they've done a lot of work on it with the version 3 upgrade, quite apart from the fact that it's got a sort of Raleigh Seaboard kind of keyboard on it now. It's just genuinely a great instrument. I'll explain a little bit about some of the other techniques I've used in later on in the piece. I've run that through Guitar Rig and given it this sort of trem Americana feel, because I think that fits with the Westworld type of kind of atmosphere. And then underpinning all of that is a didgeridoo. Now that is actually the first instrument I recorded in this whole piece. Before I'd written any of the music or gone onto my bass or anything, I knew I was going to have didgeridoo in this section, because to me that felt like he's changing genre. It just feels like that sort of instrument. So that is actually from Eduardo Tarantelli's Dark Era series, and this is mostly about Vikings and the ancient Norse and that sort of stuff. Not quite sure how a didgeridoo fits into all that, but it's a great instrument, so I've put that in there. Let's just have a listen to the whole thing. So here we are. So the didge is not massively forward, but it's giving that kind of weird sound in the background. If we just run back a little bit, I'll solo it up because it's worth having a quick listen to. And I just think it just gave that feel. Anyway, that's my indulgence. So the trem guitar outros then into twin distorted electrics, which are panned sort of midway left and right, and they're both again Ample Sounds Gibson Les Pauls, but I've run them through Guitar Rig with different effects. So this one's got quite a delay on it. That really does ring out, and it's got quite an aggressive trebly tone to it, whereas this one has a totally different setup. Nowhere near as much delay on it, and a totally different tone. So if you're going to pan guitars left and right, you really need to make sure that the tones are different, otherwise you'll get all sorts of horrible phasing issues, or maybe cancellation completely, you'll hardly hear them, or you might just get a mono sound right down the middle anyway, which defeats the object of having the two guitars. So this is one of my first repeating themes, this guitar line, and it's in that 11/4, which reflects what's going on in the car because they're being thrown about all over the place. But once we get into this straight, then I go for a straight 4/4, and that just reflects the fact that they're just powering forward. And there's there's quite a bit going on in the bass and drums as well, so I didn't want it just to be a straightforward 4/4 with nothing else happening. Let's go back and just have a listen to what the bass and drums are doing. We've also got the shaker in there again, just to give a little bit of extra texture. So just a few little fills and bass runs just to make things a little bit more interesting. So we'll play into the next sequence and I'll explain some of the choices I've made here. We drop the 2 distorted guitars, but we keep a Les Paul as a lead sound over the top. So the scene broadens out, everything seems slower, so we've gone to a half rhythm rather than a faster one. We've got the acoustic instruments in there now, these last 2 in the suite of instruments I'm going to be using. But the electric guitar is there really to give that continuity. Stop that there. We don't want to just ditch the electric guitars and go completely acoustic suddenly. Again, that can be quite jarring. So that lead kind of eases you into the acoustic section because we're coming into the car now. We don't want everything chugging away at full bore because there's dialogue here. So the instruments that I've used, I'll go through those acoustic instruments so you can see what I'm using there. So for the acoustic guitar, I'm using Native Instruments Strummed Acoustic. I like that because it has a very natural sounding feel to it, and you can, play your own chords in, which is great for a keyboardist like myself. I do play a bit of acoustic guitar, but again, I don't think I could record it as well as the VST instrument is recorded. And then for the mandolin, I've got Dream Audio Tools. Is it Dream Audio Tools? Indie Mandolin, which I think is a brilliant instrument. I use this so much. It sounds great as a mandolin, just playing straight off, but also it's got a wide bank of different rhythms that you can use to create weird little textures and counter rhythms and things, which works really well. And when you've got those 2 playing together, it's sounding like this. Now that sounds horribly tinny because I've absolutely mullered the EQ on the acoustic guitar, but that's because once it gets into the mix I want it to cut through, so I've stripped out all the bottom end that would be interfering with the drums and potentially the electric distorted guitars, just so that it cuts through. So in isolation sounds awful, but works in the mix. So coming into the car, we need to fade out the guitar just so that it doesn't interfere with the dialogue, but we've got those acoustic instruments now to carry things forward, and they've got a kind of western feel which I really like as they're loading up the guns, basically tooling up for a fight. And also watch for Rachel Evanwood's really evil smile. I've tried to capture that in the music with a slide guitar. I'll show you what that looks like.
Is that an issue?
No. It's not.
So we have that slide. Again, I've been listening to too much Megan slide guitar in Larkin Poe. The way I created that is the new version 3 of the Les Paul from Ample Sounds has a wonderful slide guitar feature. So I've set up an expression map, and that means that I can quite literally just draw in the articulations that I want, and it will incorporate them automatically. So here you can see I've got slide guitar here, so both of these kind of chords will slide, and then we've got a slide in out articulation, which means that if this is overlapping, then it's like running your finger down the fretboard to get down to this note here. So yeah, you can hear that.
It's not.
Wonderful instrument. So now we're going to create some tension with double speed bass and bass drum and the mandolin doing this little riff, and then once the dialogue's over we repeat the riff on the electric guitars. And these are then going to take over, so we're introducing them And then we've got the drums doing a bit of rhythmic snare stuff, mirrors the machine guns.
Maintain speed.
And this section is the same riff as we used earlier on for the chase, so it's that 11/4, but it's actually in A minor now instead of D minor. It's up 5 tones. And now the mandolin comes back in, because we're getting towards the climax now. The missile goes off. We've got a slightly different riff on the guitars. Bass goes down, and we're now just back to mandolin, and the shaker has come back in at this point to give that little rhythm. And in fact, at this point, the drums are actually quite slow, but the shaker's carrying things along. The mandolin is working like a sort of clockwork type sound, really. And then as we get to the actual explosion, we're going to bring in the guitars again. And they hit one beat before the car goes over. Now the bass comes back in, it's mirroring what we did right at the beginning of the piece. We start with the bass, and then the guitar comes in. And this is all fairly straightforward. And then as we get into the car, we get the slide guitar again.
Accelerate. Acceleration 90%.
And we're just driving along at 4/4 pace. And then, as I mentioned, the bookend, here it comes.
Stop.
And I just love the ambience and the sound of the car screeching to a halt. So I really wanted to capture that and not have any music over it. So you really hear the tyres and the echoing sound, and that beginning of the tension is because there's no music there. And in the sound design for the last bit, I've got a few different instruments in here. I've used a soundscape from ancient era, not dark era as I've written there, and that gives the sort of bass undertone. We've got something slightly higher from Albion. That's the trumpet orchestra. It doesn't sound like a trumpet, but it's made of trumpets, so that gives the sound that it's just sort of overlaying. It's really kind of, you know, this high-pitched sound, and it's got no release whatsoever on it, so that as soon as you take your fingers off, it stops dead. And we're also reusing Logia that we used at the beginning to give that linking theme to the start of the track. And then as soon as all of these cut dead with the explosion, you'll see that the tremolo guitar comes in to finish it all off, and the bass guitar as well. So we've got the trem guitar and the bass guitar that hit, and that looks like this.
Why the f are we stopping?
Get down.
So that's pretty much it. That's a walkthrough of what I did and what I was thinking, and the different instruments. I hope that some of those instruments are probably familiar to you, but some might not be, and it's you know, always worth having a look back. I really did try my best not to go down the route that I've seen other people going, just to create my own spin on it, because as I say, there are some fantastic examples of orchestral stuff out there, and hybrid scores and electronic. I've had permission from a couple of people to show you a few bits and pieces from their videos, so I just wanted to take you through a couple of those because I think these are really worth mentioning. Now, I particularly like this one by Action. It's an orchestral one basically, but it's got these fantastic rhythmic syncopated clapping sections and acoustic guitar. Let's just play a little section. And so he's brought it down inside the car as well. Lovely string line there, beautiful.
Isn't that
And the
standard
acoustic
issue?
guitar.
No. It's not.
Anyway, I could play the whole thing, but check it out for yourself. That's a lovely hybrid of orchestral and acoustic instruments. It's got a really good feel to it. And with Andrew Morgan Smith's one, you can instantly see where he's coming from. This is just a brilliant take on the sort of 80s action adventure movies we've all grown to know and love. I'll play you a bit from this. Now, I could pick so many moments from this, but we'll start near the beginning because it really gives you a flavour of what this is about.
Verified. Enable semi-automatic control. Disable safety features. Maximum speed. Go.
It's just epic orchestration.
What's happening to him?
Well, you just check it out yourself. There are so many good moments from this, it's hard to pick them. But it just goes to show you the different ways that you can interpret all of this. Another one I'd thoroughly recommend checking out, just because it's utterly bonkers, but bonkers in a brilliant way, is Hybrid Noir by Luke. I didn't get permission to use that in time to do this video, and I don't like to put other people's copyright material up without their permission, but I have had some conversations with him, and yeah, just I love this. It's just a totally unique take on it. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you know, have a listen. Anyway, that's about it for today. I do hope you enjoyed that, got something out of it, and you're aware now of just how many different ways there are to interpret these screen compositions, and do check out as many as you can. There are some absolutely brilliant ones out there. I could have picked another 10-15 quite easily, but we're knocking on time really, aren't we? So I'll play out with my full version, but if you've already heard it, then see you on the next one. If you want to like and subscribe, then please feel free, but otherwise I'll see you next time.
We're approaching now. Stand by, got it.
Verified. Enable semi-automatic control. Disable safety features. Maximum speed. Go. What's happening to him?
I think he's switching genres.
We need distance. Head south.
Isn't that standard issue?
No. It's not. Point and shoot. Police ahead. Maintain speed. Sharp left. Now. charges now. Accelerate. Acceleration at 90%. Roll 94%. Roar 98%. Stop.
Why the f are we stopping?
Get down.